some people who do know me on this group, given the chance to talk, I will talk for quite a while, and usually quite enthusiastically, and a number of different things will come into my head. So I'll try and limit it as much as I possibly can. I'll give you a bit of an idea of where I've come from. So I've worked. One thing we spoke about quite a lot, which I've noticed quite a lot in this talk, is that the generations of us were quite well represented across a range of different age groups in this presentation or this meeting. And I think to see anything change, we do need a kind of an effect of the generation that are growing up, so that it becomes a norm for them. And we spoke about the kind of lack of seeing young people actively traveling compared to when I'm 42, compared to when I was young. In fact, by chance, Tim and I grew up in a very close area. We played football together when we were young, and I would walk up to Shortwood Green, which was about half a mile from the town. And it was just something that I grew up with, was walking to school in Ellsworth. And that was just something we did. And recently I recorded a story that I did get on a bike at one holiday and just cycled with my friends, and realized now that I've cycled from Ellsworth to Chalford over the top without really knowing where I was. But in those days, we had the freedom to do it, and we just kind of went off and did what we wanted to do. And that's kind of where we've lost a generation of freedom to do that. And so with regards to my thought process, actually one thing that I'm really encouraged by is the fact that the infrastructure in Stroud is really, really encouraging rather, and encourageable probably as well. And that we are really looking to make a change. We're actually really well set within this. I don't think we're, from when I've come to this, I don't know if I'm starting from scratch. I've done a few things on active travel. I had some fun. My role, basically, I'm what's called a school games organizer in my job, where it's a government funded scheme, and you are positioned within the district. And I've been doing that for 10 years almost, where I oversee the delivery of a program of sporting activities, well-being, physical activities for children within our primary and secondary schools. And now, since COVID, I've helped create a school sports network in Stroud district to then roll out a whole lot of activities. One of which last year with the Commonwealth Games that we had in Birmingham was we received funding to make a difference within our area. Some of the SGOs, school games organisers in the county, did like one-hit wonders, as I would maybe call them, like one impact that lasted for a day, but I wanted to make things sustainable. So, for example, Robin was on the receiving end of this, which was quite nice. We organised a walking bus where children were met at a central location, and then the funding allowed me to have a team of staff where we would walk children safely from that location to the school. We were really blessed with some lush weather, which was really, really good. So, but we've managed, one school decided to keep it going at the Thrupp. Their location is quite challenging, in the middle of like a really long road, and it's in the middle. In fact, I've been a victim of reversing into a car whilst going to that school. So everything was fine. But yeah, and we've kept that going through support from the school and local parish councils, local parish groups, and it's still going now, and it's every day. It runs every single day of that school day, and we meet at the lay-by in Brimscombe, and our 2 members of staff walk kids up. Even on miserable days, we still get 2 kids maybe, but today we've had about 14 children walk to school, taking cars off the road. They are driven now quite a few occasions, but it means they're not driven straight to the gate, or they share lifts as well. So yeah, my main thing going forward as a bike mayor is I want to basically make Stroud a functional infrastructure to promote physical travel, active travel, and create a healthier lifestyle for everyone. Quite often, like we've spoken about, it's not the chosen travel that is the problem, where we go for maybe our visits and our tourism locally. It's actually the functional travel that causes the biggest impact, of going to work, going to appointments, like you said, or educational purposes, and that's the main thing. So really, my priority is to create an infrastructure in Stroud that promotes that and then takes down any barriers as to reason why. I've been active all my life, and I'm quite lucky that I'm that way inclined, but there are still barriers that there's reasons not to do things, like the weather's rubbish, the bike path might be muddy. My office is over by the M5, and last year on a sunny day I cycled in along the towpath, which is a beautiful route, but going through the puddles and leaves me with clay up my backside, and I arrive at work mucky and muddy and in need to change before I make myself presentable. So for me, it's creating this infrastructure that gives people reason to do it as opposed to a reason not to do it. And that includes everyone in our community. One thing that I have noticed in working locally quite a lot recently is the amount of people who do want to actively travel, who are really, really geared towards it. And I think if we created a stronger infrastructure that had better access, better roads without potholes in, wider pavements, potentially better bicycle tracks, people would be more inclined to do it, whether it's walking, jogging, running, cycling, e-biking, scooting, any form of active travel would be endorsed by that. And it's kind of treating the kind of subconsciousness of that people might see signage that promotes it and makes it a friendlier environment for everyone. But I could go on. I've got a whole bit of paper here that I've just been jotting things down, and I realize I've just been talking constantly for a few minutes anyway. So, but if there's any questions, then of course you can ask me.
No, thank you. We just appreciate you dropping by, because it's kind of last minute as well. So has anyone got any questions? Oh, yeah. Oh no, I thought I saw a hand go up.
So Robin put his hand up.
Yeah. Hello there.
Hi.
Yes, my questions were that it's I like the way you're focusing, not just you're focusing on what people need to do functionally. I think that's really important. And one of the problems, I think, of the way we've thought about cycle routes in this country is we're endlessly focusing on leisure. And we're not making cycling an everyday thing. And that's where I think putting more effort into supporting people getting used to how brilliant e-bikes are is really, really important, because it crosses all ages. It encourages older people to carry on riding, and that improves their health dramatically. People who've had hip transplants and things like that can get fit again. It's also much lower cost than infrastructure. Now, we need the infrastructure done, but the more people we've got cycling, the more political pressure there will be to do the infrastructure. So I think it's really important not to think we've got to do the infrastructure before we really get the bikes going. It's about doing the two things at once. And
yeah, it's
the council can get far more bangs for their bucks if they stick it into helping e-bikes around than they will by just the endless time-consuming business of getting infrastructure done in a culture which is really difficult to do it.
And it's what I find in school, there's a number of, especially in the modern era, of people, people have barriers there. They find reasons not to do things. They feel like it's unsafe. That sometimes, especially amongst the female population of school, that they don't want to get sweaty. They don't want their clothes to be smelly. They see exercise as a negative thing, where actually it can be seen so much more positively. And it works both ways, because if people realize that something's being used, then they will make more of a reason to invest in it, as opposed to, this is the biggest thing with sport in Stroud, actually, because I work with across the whole county, is that many of our elite sports people within our schools in the last 10 to 20 years they find a barrier in Stroud, and they move to Cheltenham or Gloucester, which then justifies the money going to Cheltenham or Gloucester because the elite sportsmen are from there. If we find out that more people are using the infrastructure we've got, then it gives more reason to invest in it. If people think that infrastructure is lying dormant, then I think, well, no one's using it anyway, so how can we really justify spending 20, 30, 50, 250k on something that potentially could be wasted? So it's a kind of like, there's no chicken and egg. It's like, it's just a circular movement of circular for a bike. It's that movement that needs to happen.
Yeah, and the great thing about e-bikes is you don't get hot and sweaty. And you've got mud guards. You don't get to work muddy. you know, basically you get to work feeling like you've had a good stroll. So it transforms what people's expectation of cycling is. That's why it's so important to, you know, get people on these e-bikes as fast as we can. When you look at Europe, you know, there's a massive increase in e-bike use, and it's vastly bigger than the UK, even in countries which are flat. So, you know, we ought to be really making it work.
I think other Robin's got a
Other Robin right here. I think, yeah, Robin, James, you both make a really good point there. That visibility is absolutely key. Normalising going to school or going to work or going to a meeting on a bike is a way of demonstrating that it's possible, wearing ordinary clothes rather than having to wear high vis all the time. And also, you know, going back to projects, we talked a lot about projects in terms of, you know, digging new bike paths or segregated cycle tracks, whatever, but actually any project that encourages modal shift, and that could be like establishing bike parking because people are always looking for bike parking, or as I mentioned, now there's also got a station where you can park your bike and there's a bike pump there and basic tools, so you can do spot repairs, or converting a disused shop into a bike parking space. You know, these kind of things are all possible. Anything that can encourage uptake and that shift are all projects that are more likely to be supported because they can be delivered. So definitely worth thinking about. Don't just think about digging roads. Think about all the other things we can do to encourage modal shift.
It's even like using the infrastructure we've got. One thing I've written here was storage, showers and lockers facilities. If you build partnerships with local sports centres, they've already got showers there, or local schools maybe that have a different entrance to and access to changing facilities that might be a walk away from where you need to work. It's building those partnerships with the infrastructure that already exists to enable those people who are keen to use a bike, the ability to use a bike. And actually that doesn't cost anything at all, just takes a bit of communication and a bit of groundwork in terms of communication, not digging holes, and then it's already achieved. And that's kind of something that I've kind of started to sow seeds on, of like with the Chambers of Commerce for local groups, local towns, can they help support things so that their facilities can be used a benefit to the community, but also maybe a benefit to local industry as well. So go on, Marvin.
Yeah, another little device that worked really well was a number of companies have got trouble with car parking. And if you go to them, so we've been to them and said, well, why don't you have an employees e-bike trial scheme? And then get your employees riding e-bikes to work on a trial scheme, and then give them advice on buying bikes, and they then buy them on the salary sacrifice scheme, which is a very cheap way of buying a bike if you're employed. So that's another way of, you know, really leveraging the getting people on them quickly. And you're endlessly trying to focus away from the notions around leisure, which is because all our publicity and our effort has been promoting cycling for leisure and sport, we've deprived the country of our ability for it being an everyday form of transport. Sorry to rant on.
No, it's not. It's like the biggest thing for me is that the unconscious activity that you do keeps you fit. My job, lucky enough, is I'm active. In fact, I'm less active now because I took a new job role in January. But previously, when I worked at some primary schools, it was 3 days a week. I'm racking up 25,000 steps a day just by teaching PE. And it's not, you know, if someone was to say to me, when I've done one of my sports events, someone was to say to me, you're going to go walk 14 miles today, I'd be like, no, I'm right, thank you. I don't want to walk 14 miles. But in the course of 6 hours at work, I've walked 14 miles by just going up and down sports pitches, setting them up, taking them down. And that's actually the way to keep fit. It's not the forced activity, it's the unconscious activity. And it starts with our young generation of being able to let them know that actually their day-to-day functionality is the thing that keeps them fit, not them being involved in sports clubs. That's just an extra to what they want to do because they desire to do it. Their day-to-day process is what keeps them fit.
Thank you. I'm going to just interject very briefly because I've been really interested in how the conversation's moved on to the kind of softer social kind of organising that needs to happen to encourage this. I think that's got a lot of scope. I wish we had another half hour to extend, but we don't. James Beecher from Access Bikes has asked to very, very quickly talk before we close, if that's okay with everyone, about his project. James, if you could keep it just a couple of minutes, and then we have time at the end just to share any extra news, maybe anyone who wants to share, say what their group's been up to. And I've got an announcement at the end about our next meeting as well. So thank you so much, new Bicycle Mayor. That's wonderful, thanks. And what I will do is share contacts, slides, etc. with everyone interested after the session. I'm not going to do it after the session, tomorrow. So you can maybe pick up these conversations after the session. So I'll hand over to James now for just a couple of minutes, and then we can all come back together and wrap it up with a bit of shared news, if that's okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jess. Yeah, I thought I better I thought Access Bike had been mentioned a couple of times, and I thought maybe not everyone on the call is familiar with it, particularly people who aren't on the call but might watch the recording. So I thought I'd do a quick explanation, because it does seem relevant to active travel. We've got a community bike workshop and space for young people, which is based in Frome Hall Mill, which is just off the Cairns Cross Road. I think there's become a little bit of confusion about us and the bike drop, which we used to be the same project, and the bike drop is now its own separate project, which is based in Brimscombe Mill, the other way out of Stroud. So our key focus since we started about 7 years ago is removing financial barriers to owning and maintaining a bike. So to that end, we're now open, the workshop's open 4 days a week for different groups of people to come in, use the workshop for free. You get access to the tools, which often can be quite expensive, or particularly the bike stands. So a lot of people come in just to work on their own bikes, mostly 13 to 25-year-olds, which is the main group that we sort of restrict entry to. But we do have a women-only session that happens every Monday night, 3:30 till 7:30, which is about getting to some of those other barriers that we've sort of gently touched on, around reasons why people might not be maintaining these sort of unconscious things or utilitarian cycling. And yeah, then we're doing a bit of skill sharing with the kids and promoting cycling as a healthy and sustainable transport option generally. The other thing that I really want to talk about quickly, which yeah, will get shared around and people will see it soon. I'm just waiting. We've just handed it in and I'm waiting on a bit of feedback before we share it with others, is a feasibility study that we've done around Stroud railway station and possibly setting up a cycle hire centre of some kind there, with a bit of emphasis exploring what that could be like in terms of electric bikes. So I've had a little chat with Chloe about that and Robin and stuff, but yeah, it's a great big report, so it'll be nice for people to see it and have a look at that once it's ready. So I just thought I'd sort of give people a little pre-mention of it tonight, and I'd love to get some feedback from people once we're sharing it out there. That's it. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Well, if you pass it on to us, we can share it. Really happy to. That'd be fascinating. And I had heard of that, but I knew it hasn't kind of come to fruition. So
yeah, funded by the Community Rail Partnership, I should have said. I forgot
right.
to. So they came up earlier briefly, and that's one link between us and them.
Okay, that's really good to know. Oh, hopefully that gets off the ground. Wouldn't that be transformational? That'd be amazing. Does anyone else have anything they would like to share before we close? I've got some announcement about our next meeting, which is in person, which is amazing. But yeah, just if there's any news from any of the other community groups that you'd like to share here, now's your chance. I can't see anyone's hands going up. Well, oh yeah, Martin.
I'm coming. Yeah, thanks, Jess. Yeah, okay, briefly representing, speaking for BizCan, Bisley, Eastcombe and Oakridge Can. I think what we're focusing on this year is nature recovery more than greenhouse gas emissions or transport. I'll say something in a moment about transport. So we're trying to get something going to develop, to get a network of wildlife friendly gardens. So we're targeting gardeners and allotment holders around Bisley, and talking also with our colleagues in Chalcan, and trying to get, yeah, as something that we can actually achieve something locally rather than the frustration of banging our heads against climate change ceilings. On cycling, which since we started BizCan, I've constantly wanted to do something about it, and we haven't really. And I think it comes to this: the two things that deter people up in the very hilliest places like ours are the hills and the sense of safety on the road. Well, e-bikes, as people have been saying, have got the hills sorted. I have one. I go up and down from Stroud, no problem, or Gloucester even from here. The other part of it is the really difficult one, and there, unless the sort of infrastructure that would solve the problem, off-road segregated bike lane, enormous expense to connect anywhere like Bisley. On road, that's the challenge, to get people over the sense of safety, even if it's not an objective safety issue. So that's where we are. Suggestions welcome. Thank you all.
Thank you. I sometimes wonder whether we talk about projects, but whether we should be focusing on campaigns around, driver awareness and things like that as well. I mean, it all integrates, doesn't it? I know I do routes that I wouldn't dare take my kid on. I just wouldn't. And annoyingly, one of them is the way to school. So yeah, it's really frustrating. Has anyone else got any news?
Yeah, just to mention that there is a monthly big bike ride from the bike drop into Stroud, which is great because even though it's only a short journey, it gets a good turnout, 40 to 50 people, often kids. There's a guy who has a dog in a pannier basket. It's really well looked after. We've got some great cyclists that cycle along and do what I think it's called corking, where they block roundabouts so that bikes can get through. And we've found, I think, over the last few months, when it started, and that's James and Becky Eldon from Chelford as well, we were nervous about how drivers might see us cycling on that and occupying that road for that length of time. But actually, there's been no trouble at all, and sometimes positively received as well. It's great to roll up into Stroud, a big crowd of bikes, and go around the town centre. So that's happened the first Saturday of every month. So there'll be one in, I think it's probably a couple of weeks now. I know from 10 o'clock at the bike drop at the long table. It's a free coffee, so do come along because it's just really good fun. It's nice to be part of the crowd. It's nice to ride a road like the A419 that you might feel otherwise very nervous about cycling down, particularly with your kids.
Yeah, here. Thanks, Rob. The only problem is how to get back up from there to Bisley.
Yeah.
James Jeffery.
Oh, all I was going to say was just to add on what Robin said there is like the roads that one thing that might be something to help is the roads that are quite tricky to cycle on and quite potential threatening is that unconscious awareness that, or subconscious rather, that if more and more people are cycling along those roads, the vehicle users get used to people cycling along those roads, and it becomes something that actually is a consideration rather than something just by habit. Like I cycle the Stroud to Stonehouse quite a lot, which is a really, really poor quality road. And I've noticed the more that I do it, the more that I have to be out in towards the middle of the road because near the curb or the side of the road is quite poor. The more that people have accommodated that, it's just like it is a generational change, which is we're going to have to force the issue upon the drivers sometimes for them to realise that actually we are not there to be pushed out the way and marginalised, but there to be part of the community as well. But that's easier said than done. I know that. But it's just building that subconsciousness that we are going to be on these roads and you're going to have to accommodate us, basically.
Yeah, we all pay our road tax, don't we?
Well, emissions, not even road tax, Robin.
And Simon, thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks all the speakers. It's been a really rich conversation. A little kind of follow-up point, Robin Coates. Could you say who you recommend for the conversion kits, and also the bikes that you found are the best ones to buy?
Conversion. There's a UK company called Cytronex who do a very, very good conversion kit with very good after-sale service. And it's not got the same size battery as the big bikes we buy, so you've got a smaller range, but because you're converting a much lighter bike, you get a very nice ride. So they're for somebody who hasn't got the money to buy an expensive bike and they've got a reasonable bike to convert, it's a good option. The bikes we buy, basically they're pretty much all European made, and we standardize on the Bosch motor and hydraulic disc brakes because of the hills. And the bikes can be made by KTM, Gazelle, Scott, Cube, Lapierre. We've used all those different makes. What we standardize on is the motor basically, and the kit that goes around the motor.
Okay, thanks a lot. And what about there's a conversion kit called Switch Bike?
Yep. It's about the same price as the Citronics, but unless you buy it with a very long waiting list, so you can buy it at half price if you wait for a container to come from China. They've got they're very good at selling the bikes. It's quite a nice kit. It's very easy to install, but it isn't as powerful or hasn't got the range of the one I mentioned.
Okay, thank you.
It was my second choice.
Thanks. You've got such experience. It's brilliant to be able to get this kind of like previews. I'm aware that we're over time now. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who's run by, especially the people who spoke and presented.